Captain Ryan Hale lived alone on the far side of the colony planet Talara 9. The mining outpost was small, built from old Earth steel and alien stone, surrounded by red dust and long silent winds. Every day he worked from sunrise to late night, repairing machines, checking fuel lines, and sending reports that no one ever answered. His food was dry, his air filters were noisy, and his only company was the faint hum of generators. He was a man who had grown tired of eating the same canned meals and hearing the same silence. One night, while sitting beside his control screen, he looked at the colony message board and wrote a simple note. Looking for a cook. Must handle human food. Good pay. Room included. He pressed send and didn't expect much. On this forgotten planet, people rarely came unless they had no other choice. He went to sleep thinking no one would reply. But the next morning, an alarm rang at the docking gate. A small ship had landed outside his station. Ryan walked to the gate, surprised. Through the dust, he saw a tall figure stepping down the ramp. She wasn't human. Her skin had a soft gray tone that shimmered faintly in the light. Her dark hair was tied loosely and she wore worn travel clothes. In her arms, she carried a small baby wrapped in blue fabric. Ryan blinked, thinking maybe she had come to the wrong place. The woman looked nervous but calm. Are you the one who wanted to cook? She asked in slow, careful English. Her voice was soft but clear. I am, Ryan said. But I didn't expect... He looked at the baby, who made a quiet cooing sound. I am Lyra, she said. I saw your message. I can cook. I can clean. I only need work and a place to stay. My child will not disturb you. He sleeps much. Ryan hesitated. He had wanted help, not a family. He looked at the tiny baby, its large golden eyes staring back at him. The thought of a child in a place filled with machines and dust seemed wrong. Yet the woman's eyes showed a calm strength, the kind that comes from someone who had already faced too much. Come in, he said finally. You can stay for the day. Show me what you can cook. Lyra smiled slightly, the first smile he had seen in months. She followed him into the outpost, moving quietly but with purpose. The baby rested against her shoulder, watching everything with curious eyes. Inside the kitchen area, Ryan cleared space on the counter. The supplies were simple. Canned beans, dried meat, mineral water, and a few strange roots that grew in the colony's soil. He handed them to her, unsure what she could do. She looked around, studying the broken oven, the dull stove, and the cold storage box. You have little, she said, but enough. She began to work. Her movements were graceful and steady. The sound of metal bowls, soft chopping, and boiling water filled the silent station. The smell changed. The stale air now carried a faint sweetness mixed with spice. Ryan sat nearby, pretending to read reports but watching her work. The baby gurgled softly on the counter, playing with a spoon. Lyra hummed a low melody from her world, a sound that felt both strange and peaceful. When she finished, she placed a bowl in front of him. The food was a simple stew, thick, golden, and steaming. Ryan took a bite, expecting little. But the flavor was alive. It wasn't the taste of home exactly, yet something in it made him remember Earth. The warmth of a kitchen, the laughter of old friends, the smell of rain. For a moment, he forgot he was on a lonely world millions of miles away. This is good, he said quietly. Lyra nodded once. My mother taught me to cook for our travelers. We use what we have. He looked at the baby again. And your child? He travels with you? She nodded. Yes, his name is Aaron. His father died when our world was hit by fire from the sky. Many of us ran to ships. I found space on a cargo vessel. I came here because humans do not shoot at refugees. Ryan felt a heavy silence fill the room. He had read about the meteor storms that had wiped out several small colonies. He had seen pictures of burning cities. But now, sitting across from this woman and her child, it no longer felt like a report. It felt real. I'm sorry, he said. Lyra looked down at her bowl. We survived. That is enough. He didn't know what to say after that. For a long while, they ate quietly. The baby made small noises, smiling each time Lyra fed him a spoonful of soft food. Ryan had forgotten how much life a child could bring into a room. After they finished eating, Ryan cleaned the dishes while Lyra sat near the heater with Aaron. She watched him fix a loose wire and asked questions about the machines. She listened carefully, learning quickly. She told him that on her world she had worked in a place where food and air were scarce. where she had to make meals from roots and plants that grew between the cracks of stone. When night came, the wind outside howled across the desert. The outpost lights flickered and the generator hummed. Ryan prepared a small room near the main hall and gave it to her. "You can stay here tonight," he said. "Tomorrow we'll talk more about work." "Thank you," she said softly. He nodded. "Good night." "Good night, Captain Hale." The next morning, Ryan woke to a smell he hadn't known for years: freshly heated bread. He walked into the kitchen and found Lyra standing beside the stove, holding Aaron on one arm and stirring a pot with the other. She had managed to make breakfast from what little was left in storage. "You wake early," Ryan said. "So does he." She smiled. "If the child wakes, the mother wakes." Ryan sat down and tasted the food. It was better than before. "You really can cook," he said. "I wasn't sure yesterday." She gave a small laugh. "You were not sure about me or the baby?" He nodded honestly. "You're right. Do you still want to cook?" she asked. He looked at her, at the small alien baby reaching for his coffee mug, and at the quiet smile on her face. The station that had once felt empty now seemed alive. The silence was gone, replaced by the soft sounds of life. "Yes," he said slowly. "I still want to cook. And maybe a little noise in this place." From that day, Lyra became part of the outpost. She cooked, cleaned, and helped Ryan with the daily work. She learned how to operate the heating systems, and he taught her how to manage the supply lines. In the evenings, when the red suns began to set, they would eat together, sharing stories about worlds that both had lost. Sometimes she would talk about her planet's oceans, where the water shone silver at night. Other times, Ryan would describe Earth: green forests, blue skies, and the sound of rain. She listened with quiet wonder, while Aaron fell asleep in her arms. Days passed, and the bond between them grew quietly. It was not love yet, but something close to trust. Two lonely souls who had found comfort in the simple act of sharing food. Ryan noticed that his mood changed. He worked faster, smiled more often, and even fixed the small garden system that had long been broken. Lyra planted alien herbs there, and soon the air smelled less like metal and more like life. One evening, as they sat near the window watching a storm rise across the red horizon, Ryan said, "You know, when I posted that message, I just wanted someone to make meals. I didn't think I'd get all this." Lyra looked at him with her calm golden eyes. "Sometimes the universe gives what we need, not what we ask." He nodded slowly. Outside, lightning flashed across the sky. Inside, the small baby stirred in his sleep, safe and warm. For the first time in years, Captain Ryan Hale felt that his outpost, his lonely piece of the galaxy, was not just a workplace. It was beginning to feel like home. The days passed quietly after Lyra came to the outpost. The old building that once felt lifeless began to sound different now. There was always the soft hum of the generator, but also the small laughter of a child, the clatter of dishes, and the soft voice of a woman humming while she cooked. Captain Ryan Hale never thought these sounds could bring peace, but now he waited for them each morning. Every sunrise, Lyra would wake early, wrap her baby in a blanket, and start cooking. The smell of fresh food would spread through the metal corridors before Ryan even opened his eyes. He would step into the kitchen, rubbing his face, pretending he was still half asleep. But she always noticed. "You wake the same time every day," she said one morning with a small smile. "Maybe your stomach knows the smell of food now." Ryan laughed and sat down, watching her stir a pot. Aaron, her small baby, sat in a corner playing with old spare parts. He would bang them together and giggle at the noise. Lyra cooked with simple things. Sometimes she used alien herbs she grew in the small hydro garden Ryan had fixed. Sometimes she found edible roots outside the station. She always found a way to make something taste new. Ryan tried to teach her human recipes, and she tried to teach him her world's way of cooking. At first, he burned half the food, but she never laughed at him. She just said kindly, "It takes patience to feed others." Over time, Ryan started to understand her better. She spoke quietly, but her words always carried meaning. She told stories about her home, a world of silver seas and tall green towers where food was shared by every family. But when the meteor storm came, everything burned. She ran with her baby and whatever she could carry. The ship she boarded left without her husband. She never knew if he survived. Ryan never asked more. He could see the pain still lived inside her eyes. One afternoon, a dust storm blew across the valley. The outpost shook under the wind. Lyra stayed close to the inner hall, holding Aaron and listening to the metal roof creak. Ryan checked the power lines outside until the wind became too strong to walk. When he came back inside covered in dust, Lyra rushed forward with worry on her face. "You should not go out there," she said. "The wind cuts like knives." He laughed softly. "I've lived through worse." But she reached up and wiped the red dust from his cheek with her sleeve. And for a moment neither spoke. That night, when the storm ended, the stars came out brighter than ever. The three of them stood at the doorway. Aaron clapped his hands and pointed at the shining lights in the sky. Lyra smiled, whispering, "He thinks the stars are his ancestors." Ryan looked at her and said quietly, "Maybe they are. Maybe they watch both of us." She turned her eyes toward the horizon and said, "I hope they forgive us for surviving." As days turned to weeks, Lyra became more than just a cook. She learned how to fix the small filters, to clean the air vents, even to operate the mining drones. She worked hard, always calm and careful. Ryan began to depend on her more than he wanted to admit. He had lived alone for so long that he had forgotten what it felt like to trust someone else. Now he found himself asking her advice before sending reports or choosing supply lists. She had a sense of balance, as if she understood how to make everything work with less. The baby grew stronger too. Aaron began to walk unsteadily through the station, laughing every time he fell. He followed Ryan around, holding onto his boots, calling him something that sounded like Raha. Lyra explained that in her language it meant bringer of light. Ryan didn't know how to respond to that, but he smiled every time the child said it. One morning, a message came from orbit. The Colony Authority planned a supply drop within 3 days. Ryan had been waiting for that shipment for months. But when the message ended, his face grew tense. The storm had damaged the north transmitter tower, and without repair, the supply ship wouldn't find the beacon to land safely. He needed to go fix it. The problem was, the tower stood miles away through dangerous rocky ground and sudden gas vents. Lyra noticed his silence. "You will go out there?" she asked. "I have to," he said. "If the beacon fails, the ship will pass us by." "No food, no tools, no oxygen cells." She held Aaron closer.
"Then I come with you." He shook his head.
"It's too risky. I'll go alone. You should not. The storms change direction fast. You could lose your way." Ryan looked at her worried face and realized how much she cared. For a moment he almost said yes, but then he smiled gently. "I've survived worse winds than this, remember?" Lyra lowered her eyes. "Be careful, Captain." He took his tool pack, sealed his suit, and left before dawn. The desert stretched endlessly before him. The wind carried fine red dust that clung to everything. As he walked, he thought about Lyra and the baby waiting inside the outpost. He had promised to return before sunset, but Talara 9 was unpredictable. Midway to the tower, the sky darkened. Lightning cracked across the hills. His scanner flickered and went out. The magnetic storm hit faster than expected. He tried to keep the direction by memory, but the wind grew too strong. Rocks rolled down the cliffs. A sudden gust threw him off balance, and he fell hard against the sand. His suit alarm beeped, a crack on the left side, leaking oxygen slowly. Back at the station, Lyra watched the storm rise from the window. The air shimmered with static. Hours passed and Ryan didn't return. Her hands trembled. Aaron cried from the noise of thunder. Finally, she stood up, tied the baby to her back, and grabbed the emergency locator. She could not wait any longer. Outside, the storm roared. Dust whipped against her face as she followed the signal line. Each step sank into the soft sand, but she kept walking. The locator beeped faintly. Through the red haze, she saw a faint light flashing. Ryan's broken helmet beacon. She ran to him, kneeling beside his still form. His visor was cracked, his oxygen meter flashing red. "Ryan!" she shouted, though her voice was lost in the wind. She opened her small pack, sealed a spare air filter to his suit, and pressed the emergency patch against the crack. Slowly, his breathing steadied. His eyes fluttered open. "Lyra?" he whispered weakly. "You are safe now," she said. "Don't speak." She lifted him with effort, half dragging, half carrying him through the storm. The baby whimpered softly but stayed quiet. The walk back felt endless. Her arms burned with pain. Her feet sank deep in the dust, but she never stopped. At last, she saw the faint glow of the outpost lights. Inside, she laid him on the floor near the heater. His face was pale, his breath heavy. She removed his cracked helmet and wiped the dust from his hair. "You foolish man," she murmured softly. "You said you had survived worse." Ryan smiled weakly. Maybe not storms like you. She laughed quietly through her tears. Sleep. You are safe. He slept for many hours. When he woke, the room smelled of soup and warmth. Lyra sat beside him, rocking the baby. She looked tired but peaceful. I owe you my life, he said quietly. You gave me a home when no one else would, she replied. Now we are even, he smiled, shaking his head. Not even. I still owe you more than food and shelter. The baby crawled to him, touching his hand. For the first time in a long while, Ryan felt something deep inside. Not duty, not survival, but connection. The next day, when the storm cleared, the supply ship finally landed. Ryan went out to guide it, his suit now repaired. The crew asked if he lived alone. He looked back at the station and said, "Not anymore." When he returned inside, Lyra had already prepared dinner. The child laughed as Ryan lifted him up. The outpost that once felt like a cage now felt like a living place. The sound of their laughter filled the room, mixing with the quiet hum of the machines. That night, as the red sun set beyond the hills, Ryan stood at the window. Lyra came beside him, holding Aaron close. You said this planet had nothing, she whispered. But maybe it only needed people who care. He looked at her and nodded slowly. Maybe that's true. Maybe the galaxy isn't empty after all. Maybe we just needed someone to remind us we're not alone. Outside, the twin moons rose over Talara 9. The wind had grown calm. The man who once wanted only a cook now had something much greater, a small family and a reason to live again. Weeks passed peacefully after the storm. The outpost returned to quiet work, but it was not the same kind of silence Ryan once knew. Now the silence carried small sounds. Lyra's footsteps, Aaron's laughter, the soft clang of pots, the hum of life returning to an empty place. Every day began with the smell of food, and every evening ended with the sound of gentle voices. Ryan had fully recovered, though a faint scar ran along his jaw where the cracked helmet had cut him. He sometimes touched it, remembering the storm and the woman who had walked through fire and wind to save him. When he thanked her again, Lyra only said, "You would have done the same." He never argued because he knew she was right. They lived in quiet rhythm. Lyra cooked, cleaned, and helped grow new plants in the small hydro garden. Ryan repaired machines, sent reports, and checked mining drones that worked in the red fields. They worked side by side, not speaking much, yet they always understood one another. When Lyra's hand brushed his as she passed a tool, or when Aaron reached for him and called his small name, Raha, Ryan felt something warm inside, something he had not felt in years. One morning, a warning light flashed on the main console. Ryan frowned and opened the message. It came from the outer perimeter sensors. Unknown signals were moving near the canyon, metallic shapes, perhaps ships. Lyra noticed his expression. "What is it?" she asked. "Visitors?" He nodded slowly. "Maybe, but not the kind that ask first." He checked the data again. The signals were not human. They matched an alien scavenger group known to raid abandoned colonies for tech and supplies. They didn't care who lived there. Ryan's stomach tightened. "If they come this way, we could be in danger," he said. Lyra went quiet. She knew those kinds of people too well. "What will you do?" she asked. "I'll prepare defenses. The outpost has old shields and drones. If they hold, we'll be fine." She looked toward Aaron, who was playing with a small metal cube. "And if they don't hold?" Ryan met her eyes. "Then I'll make sure they don't touch either of you." That night, the stars over Talara 9 flickered through thin clouds. Ryan stayed awake checking systems. Lyra brought him tea, her face calm but eyes full of worry. "You always fight alone," she said softly. "Maybe you don't have to anymore." He smiled faintly. "It's a habit. Hard to break." The next day, the ships appeared over the horizon. 3 small craft painted black moving low across the red dunes. Ryan powered up the outpost shields and locked the gates. The scavengers landed 2 miles away. He could see them through the long-range camera, tall figures in rough armor carrying tools and weapons. "Lyra," he said, "take Aaron to the lower storage room." "Stay there until I call." She shook her head. "I can help." "You already did. You saved me once. Let me handle this." For a long second she didn't move. Then she said quietly, "Come back." Ryan smiled. "I promise." He walked out wearing his suit, rifle slung over his shoulder. Dust swirled around his boots as he reached the outer wall. He activated the defense drones. The scavengers saw movement and began to spread out, approaching slowly. Ryan sent a warning through the speaker. "This is a human-registered site. Leave now." The answer came as static and laughter. Then one of the scavengers fired, a bright flash cutting across the air. Ryan ducked behind the barricade and returned fire. The drones joined in, red beams cutting through the sand. For minutes the valley echoed with noise. One scavenger's ship caught fire, exploding into sparks. The others moved to flank him. Ryan switched power to the shields, but they flickered, too old, too weak. Inside, Lyra held Aaron close. The baby cried softly from the thunder outside. She listened to the distant shots, each one striking like a heartbeat. Finally, she couldn't stand it. She placed the baby in the small supply pod, set it to seal if danger came near, and ran up the stairs. Ryan was crouched near the outer gate, breathing hard. "What are you doing here?" he shouted when he saw her. "You need help," she said firmly. She picked up one of his spare rifles. Her hands were steady. "I used to guard food convoys before the war. I remember how to aim." He hesitated, then nodded. Together they fired at the advancing shadows. The scavengers, seeing two defenders instead of one, hesitated. Ryan used the moment to overload a nearby drone, turning it into a makeshift bomb. When it exploded, the blast scattered dust and metal. The scavengers finally retreated toward their ships. One of them shouted something in a harsh alien language, but then they lifted off, disappearing into the sky. For a long moment, everything was silent except the wind. Ryan lowered his rifle, breathing heavily. Lyra stepped beside him, her hands shaking slightly. "They're gone," she whispered. He looked at her and smiled. "You saved us again." She gave a small, tired laugh. "No, we saved each other." When they went back inside, Aaron was safe in the pod, crying loudly for attention. Lyra lifted him, whispering softly until he calmed. Ryan leaned against the wall, exhausted but grateful. "You were right," he said quietly. "Maybe I don't have to fight alone anymore." That night, after the emergency lights faded and quiet returned, they sat near the heater. Lyra was sewing a tear in Ryan's sleeve, and Aaron slept beside her. Ryan watched her hands move carefully with the small needle. "You know," he said, "most people would have left this planet after something like that." She didn't look up. "Most people don't have a reason to stay, and you do." She paused, then smiled softly. "Yes, my child needs a home. And maybe you need company." He didn't answer right away. He just looked at the tiny child sleeping peacefully, the soft glow of the heater on Lyra's face. "You're right," he said finally. "I needed both more than I knew." Days later, they worked to repair the damaged systems. Ryan taught Lyra how to calibrate the shield grid. She taught him how to strengthen field joints with natural resin she made from alien plants. Together, they rebuilt what had been broken. The colony authority sent a short message saying the distress signal had reached them, but they wouldn't arrive for several months. It didn't matter. The outpost was stronger now, alive again. As weeks turned to months, the small family found rhythm in survival. Aaron grew taller, walking faster, learning to say simple words in both human and alien speech. Ryan built him a toy ship from spare parts. Every evening, Lyra and Ryan would sit outside when the wind calmed, watching the twin suns fade behind the red dunes. They didn't speak much, there was no need. The silence between them had become something gentle. But peace on Talara 9 never lasted long. One evening, while Ryan checked the comms array, he received a signal unlike any before. It came from deep space, coded in Lyra's native frequency. She heard the faint melody of her people's distress pattern and froze. "That's from my kind," she whispered. "It says, 'Survivors.'" Ryan's heart tightened. "They're alive?" She nodded slowly, tears shining in her eyes. "They need help. Their ship is damaged near the outer ring." Ryan studied the readings. It was far, too far for a rescue without risk. The sandstorms were growing again and the supply reserves were low. But when he looked at her face, he saw something he couldn't ignore. "We'll go," he said simply. "You'd do that?" she asked. "You came to save me once." "It's my turn." They worked through the night preparing the small shuttle. Ryan checked fuel lines while Lyra packed food and oxygen. Aaron slept in her arms, unaware of the danger ahead. When dawn came, they were ready. The engines roared to life, shaking the ground. Ryan took the pilot seat, Lyra beside him, holding her child close. As the ship lifted from the dust, the outpost shrank below them, a small dot in an endless red world that had become their home. The journey through orbit was rough. Magnetic storms pulled at the hull and lightning flashed through the clouds. Ryan kept his hands firm on the controls, guiding them through turbulence. Lyra whispered a prayer from her world, her voice steady. "The stars hear the brave," she said softly. After hours of flight, they found the wreck, a broken alien vessel floating near the asteroid belt. Its beacon flickered weakly. Ryan maneuvered the shuttle closer. "Life signs are faint," he said. "But there's still someone inside." They docked carefully. Lyra left Aaron strapped safely in the back seat and followed Ryan through the airlock. The wreck was dark and cold. Inside, faint lights blinked between twisted metal. They found 2 survivors, one woman barely conscious, another injured badly. Lyra knelt beside them, speaking softly in her native tongue. Their eyes widened with recognition and relief. She turned to Ryan, tears in her eyes. "They are from my village. They thought everyone was gone. Then we got here in time," he said. They carried the survivors to the shuttle. As they lifted away from the wreck, the stars shone brighter, as if lighting their path home. Lyra held one woman's hand and whispered thanks to the stars. Ryan looked at them both and smiled faintly. He didn't understand her language, but he understood her heart. When they returned to Talara 9, the storm had passed. The survivors rested safely inside the outpost. Aaron laughed as if the world had grown larger. Ryan stood at the window, watching the sky turn gold. Lyra came beside him, her face calm and shining. "You gave them hope," she said. "No," Ryan replied softly. "You did. I just followed." Outside, the twin suns rose again. The man who once wanted only a cook had become a protector, and the alien mother who came for work had become something far more. Together, they had turned a forgotten outpost into a home where 2 worlds could begin again. The days after the rescue felt different. The outpost that once held only the hum of machines and the small laughter of a child now carried new voices. The 2 survivors Lyra had saved were weak but alive. Ryan gave them medical supplies and fixed one of the spare rooms for them to rest. They were both from her world, both women who had once worked in a food colony near the silver ocean she always spoke of. When they saw Aaron, they wept softly, calling him the child of hope. The quiet desert around the outpost was peaceful again. The red sun rose over the hills, shining across the metal roofs. Ryan began his mornings with repairs while Lyra and the others cooked or cleaned. Sometimes Aaron would follow him around, holding a tiny wrench and pretending to help. The boy's laugh made the hard work easier. Ryan could not imagine a day without hearing it now. One morning, Lyra came to him while he was fixing a generator. Her expression was calm but serious. "They need to go," she said softly. "My people. They must leave when they recover. Their ship still works and they must find others of our kind." Ryan nodded slowly, wiping the dust from his hands. "You want to go with them?" She didn't answer right away. The sound of wind filled the space between them. Finally, she said, "I should. They are my people. They need help to rebuild what was lost." Ryan felt something tighten in his chest. He wanted to say no, to tell her to stay, but he couldn't. He looked at her and said quietly, "You've done enough for everyone already. You don't have to carry the world on your shoulders." Lyra smiled faintly. "You say that because you do the same. But duty is not always heavy when it comes from the heart." He turned away, pretending to check the cables. "And what about Aaron?" "His home is here now." She stepped closer. "His home is where I am. But if I could, I would make it both." That evening, the small group ate together. The rescued women were strong enough to sit by the heater and share food. They told stories about the past, about songs once sung by the fires near their ocean cities. Ryan listened quietly. Aaron sat in his lap, playing with the buttons on his jacket. Lyra sang one of the songs in her language, a soft melody that filled the room with warmth. When it ended, even the machine seemed quieter. Later that night, when everyone slept, Ryan walked outside. The air was cool, the sand glowing faintly under the twin moons. He looked at the stars and thought of Earth, a world far away that he barely remembered. It had been years since he'd spoken to anyone from there. His home was gone in distance, if not in memory. Maybe Lyra was right. Home was not a place, but the people who gave it meaning. The next morning, the survivor's ship was ready. Ryan had helped repair the engines himself. The time for goodbye came too soon. The women thanked him, bowing in their way, and then looked to Lyra. She stood silent for a long time, watching the rising dust around the ship. Aaron clung to her leg, not understanding what was happening. Ryan came forward. "You don't have to go today," he said. The weather's not clear. You can wait. She looked at him with calm golden eyes. You know I must. He swallowed hard. Then I won't stop you, but I'll miss having someone around who knows how to make real food. Her lips curved in a small smile. And I'll miss someone who fixes every broken thing before it breaks. She lifted Aaron into her arms. The boy looked at Ryan and reached out, his tiny hand opening and closing. Ryan took it gently. You'll be a great builder one day, he said softly. Like your mother. Lyra whispered something to her son in her language, then turned to Ryan again. You gave me a home when I had nothing. I won't forget that. And you gave me a reason to live, he said quietly. That's not something I'll forget either. The ship's engines started. The air shook around them. The wind lifted Lyra's hair as she stood by the ramp. She looked at him one last time, her eyes bright in the morning light. Maybe one day, she said, our stars will meet again. Ryan nodded, unable to speak. She walked up the ramp carrying Aaron. The ship lifted slowly, rising through the red dust, then vanished into the pale sky. For a long time, Ryan stood there alone. The wind moved gently through the empty yard. Inside the outpost, everything was silent again. He sat in the kitchen where they had shared so many meals. The pots were still in their place. A small cloth she used to clean the table was folded neatly beside the sink. He picked it up and held it for a long time, staring at the faint mark of her hands. Days turned to weeks. Ryan went back to work, fixing machines, sending reports, keeping the systems running. But the station felt hollow again. The laughter was gone, the warmth was gone. At night, he sometimes looked at the stars, wondering where she was, if her ship had reached safety. One evening, a strange signal appeared on his screen. It was soft, almost like static, but the rhythm was familiar. 3 short pulses, 2 long, 1 short. He froze. That was the same rhythm Aaron used to tap when he played with his tools. He opened the channel, heart racing. The sound repeated again, then a voice came through. Ryan, it's me. It was Lyra. Her voice was faint but clear enough to make his chest tighten. He quickly replied, Lyra, are you safe? Yes, she said. We reached the others. There are more survivors, families, children. We found a small moon that can be a home. We are building farms, gardens, and shelters. It is slow, but we are alive. Ryan felt a deep relief wash over him. I'm glad. I thought I might never hear from you again. There was a soft laugh through the static. You humans always think the worst. You forget how strong we are, he smiled. Maybe I just missed your cooking. You miss the company more, she said kindly. He didn't deny it. Yes, the outpost feels empty again. Then come, she said after a pause. Come here. You can help us build. We need machines, power, people who fix things. You would not be alone. Ryan looked out the window. The red dunes stretched far into the horizon. This place had been his home for years, but now it felt like a memory. The stars above seemed to whisper that his time here was done. When I leave, he said softly, no one will keep this place running. You already gave it life once, she answered. Now give life somewhere else. He sat silently for a moment, then nodded. All right. Send me your coordinates. The message ended, leaving a warm silence behind. Ryan began to pack. He filled a small case with tools, a few keepsakes, and a small metal cube Aaron had once played with. He powered down the old systems one by one until only the beacon remained, a single light blinking in the endless red desert. The next morning he boarded the shuttle and took off. The planet grew smaller below him, fading under layers of clouds and storm. Ahead, the stars stretched wide and bright. The coordinates Lyra had sent guided him toward a soft blue moon near a glowing nebula. As he approached, he saw lights on the surface, signs of buildings, gardens, and people moving below. When he landed, the airlock opened to a warm breeze. Lyra was there, waiting, holding Aaron by the hand. The boy had grown taller, his eyes brighter. When he saw Ryan, he ran forward, shouting a word in his mother's language that meant home. Ryan knelt and caught him in his arms. Lyra smiled, her eyes shining. I told you the stars would meet again. Ryan looked around. The small colony was alive, humans and aliens working together, building houses, planting crops, laughing. It was what both their worlds had lost, now reborn in a new place. That night, as the twin moons of the blue world rose above them, Ryan and Lyra sat outside watching the horizon. Aaron played near the lights, chasing small glowing insects. The stars reflected in Lyra's golden eyes as she said softly, "You wanted a cook, but you found something else instead." Ryan smiled, his voice gentle. "I found a family." The wind carried their laughter across the field. The stars above shimmered like witnesses to a promise that even across worlds hope could survive. The man who once lived alone among machines had found warmth again, not from fire or steel, but from the hearts that shared his table. And so, on a moon far from any known star, a human engineer and an alien mother began a new chapter. One where no one was alone, and where every meal, every sunrise, and every sound of laughter reminded them that the universe, no matter how vast, could still feel like home.